And good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you're calling in from. I want to welcome you to the first of our 2021 Geograph webinar series. For those of you that are unfamiliar with Geograph, we provide GIS-specific products and services to organizations that build, own, and operate telecommunication networks. At the heart, we are self-proclaimed telecom junkies. As stated, this is our first in a series of webinars. And so I want to kind of go over a little bit about what we're going to talk about today before I get into our schedule of upcoming webinars. Today, we're going to talk about and define what exactly is a legacy network and what does that mean. We're going to talk a little bit about the current state of telco broadband networks. We're going to look at the 5 common issues managing legacy networks. And then we're going to talk about how GIS can help. Then we're going to take a little look at GIS in action with a little live demo, and then we'll have some opportunity for question and answers. If you'd like to ask a question, please feel free to use your chat bar to submit your question, and we'll take care of those at the end. Then we'll have a few closing remarks, and hopefully we'll wrap this up in about 30 minutes and get you guys on your way. So as I said, this is the first of a series of quarterly webinars that we're planning for the 2021 year. Today, we're talking about legacy networks. In June, we're going to look at the pros and cons to consider when designing fiber networks. Followed up with a September webinar on bringing spatial awareness to feasibility planning. And then finally, to wrap up the year in November, we're going to talk about using GIS to minimize OpEx. We hope these webinars can be informational for everyone in the industry. One of the things that we try to do with this is to expand the knowledge within our customer base and potential customer base and bring some of our experiences along with that. So we hope that you'll plan these out and join us as more information follows. So first off, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. So I've spent 20 plus years in telecommunications, specifically in the engineering and consulting world. I've designed, built, and managed networks throughout the country. Back in 2006, I was an AutoCAD. I was trained in AutoCAD to do design and engineering. In 2006, I found GIS, specifically the Esri GIS platform, and realized the power that it gave me to design and plan, and that it allowed me to easily transition from my experience in CAD and hand drafting to doing all of my work in GIS. I consider myself to be somewhat of a dinosaur in telecommunications today because I started and learned how to design and build copper networks. I learned how to count in groups of 5, and now with fiber, I've had to transition and start learning how to count in groups of 12 when fiber came along. So I kind of consider myself a legacy as well. So what is a legacy network? We typically consider any broadband network that is not fiber to be a legacy network. But Techopedia says a legacy network is the generic name assigned to any old network which is rarely used today. But is that true? Are these networks rarely used? Well, according to the FCC and those reports that I'm sure all of you love to submit, the US is covered with about 90.9% coverage of HFC and copper plant, with only 39.8% nationwide coverage with fiber. That means that 60% of the broadband coverage in the country is running off of what we consider to be legacy plant. So why the lag? Why are we not building more fiber and converting some of these legacy plants? Well, there's several issues. Density is one of the biggest, rural versus urban. The cost per home and the cost per coverage goes up tremendously in a rural environment versus urban. We also have to consider logistics and manufacturing. Fiber lead times are always very fragile, and manufacturing plants aren't always able to keep up with the pace to keep fiber in stock to do rapid build outs. The cost per home passed. Fiber Broadband Association estimates that the average cost per home passed today is of roughly about $2,500. But of course, that goes up and down in relation to density. And then finally, financing and capital. fiber broadband reports to the FCC in 2019 estimate that we will only be at 50% coverage with fiber by 2025 at the current build out pace. To get to the 90% coverage of fiber, it would take an additional $70 billion in capital to completely cover the 90% of the US that's currently covered with HFC and copper. So what does all that mean? It means that operators are currently managing legacy networks, and they are going to have to keep these networks viable, sustainable, and cost effective for some time to come. So what are some of the issues that organizations face when having to manage legacy networks? First of all is institutional knowledge. We all know Larry the Cable Guy, and this isn't a joke. The guy that taught me how about HFC plant was actually named Larry. He was Larry the Cable Guy. But truly, we do all have these people that have institutional knowledge within our organization that we always have to have in the meeting because they know where every splice case, cut cable, and plow rip is in the network. Next, we talk about cost of conversion from going from an old system to a new system or updating CAD records. And it's a pretty costly endeavor to update our records. And so what a lot of people have done has adapted a cap and grow type of mentality. Legacy networks are labor intensive to maintain. It costs a lot. When you talk about sweeps and audits on your coax and HFC plant, to all the installation, repair, and time consuming of maintaining a copper network. We sometimes deal with old, missing, or inaccurate records. This can be compounded by backlogs of as-builts coming from the field and a slower working pace in dealing with AutoCAD. And then lastly, there's just resistance to change. We see this a lot, that people have a hard time adapting to new situations because change is hard. We like things we're used to no matter how uncomfortable we are with them. We typically avoid the inevitable. And we may even become defiant to change in an attempt to keep it from happening. And others really may want to change. We just don't know how. So how can GIS help? With GIS, all networks are managed in a single source of truth that is a data-driven visual map. Information is readily available and easily interpreted, and therefore you no longer need to consult Larry for information. Circuit connectivity and tracing for all networks regardless of medium. No need to use multiple systems to manage the different mediums or having to dig through spreadsheets or update multiple CAD drawings when there's a change. Planning, building, and managing with all knowledge in view. Now, don't get me wrong, GIS is not a black magic box. There's no solution out there that's going to fix bad data or bad management. But what GIS can do is make those processes and information easier. We hear from most of our customers that their records are worthless because of how long it takes to get new information input into the system or updated. These backlogs affect the trust that you have in your system of record. GIS allows everyone access to this information because you update one record and that extrapolates through all of your departments, personnel, and organizations. There's no need to sift through a stack of as-built drawings trying to find the right answer. So let's see how all this works in a live environment. Here we have an Esri platform. This is Esri's Arc Desktop 10.8.1. As you can see here, you have availability to a wide range of base maps, both aerial and systematic base maps. You can pull in information from counties, from parcels. It's a system where you can pull in a lot of information, not just specifically related to your network. Address information from counties and cities is readily available nowadays. Parcel information, road data for the entire country is available. You can get a lot of good information that pulls in, and a lot of that information is free. And then you can start overlaying your network. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to dive in here a little closer to a central office location that we have modeled in the network. Because I have the availability of GIS along with the power of the Crescent Link tool, I can manage all of my mediums at one time. As you can see here, I have a conduit, a copper cable, and a fiber cable, as well as a coax network modeled down here. Because I have all of this in GIS, and because this is a data-centric map, not only do I have the visualization, but I also have the power to dive into the data behind these. So a simple click on a fiber cable gives me information on all strands within that fiber, and a click on one of those fibers can give me a trace or a layout of every connection within that strand of fiber. I can see all of the locations, equipment, patch panels, and fiber cables that this strand of fiber runs through. I can also do the same thing with the same operation, did not change operations, and go to my copper cable. As you can see here, I've selected the 400 pair copper cable. Over here, I have all pairs of this 400 pair copper cable represented as well. A simple click on one of the pairs can give me the same information, a connected trace, to show me the distance that that cable pair travels and all of the locations that that cable pair presents itself. So I can see all of the splicing configurations, the access points, and the terminal of that pair that I selected from the central office. We can also do the same thing with the same operation on our coax plant. So I'm going to start on the fiber side of this node and trace this single fiber going into the fiber node. As you can see, this single fiber connecting to the coax HFC node represents 174 circuits. Well, if I expand that, I can see that each one of these circuits and the tap that it associates with. So this is a four-way 20 dB output tap, drops 1, 2, 3, and 4, all the way down. I can click on these, a simple right click, and zoom to the location of that tap. And if I had any customer information, like I do right here, I can zoom to that customer information as well. What we also have is the availability to look at coax design. So typically coax design was done in even a different operation or a different program altogether. But if we look at our coax design tool, I can do a load from map feature, click on any part of that coax network, and it's going to load the entire network into my design module here. So we can see all the branches of the node and all of the power calculations associated with that network. Here's where I can make updates or changes to my equipment to better operate and understand my network. Because we have the power of data driving these maps, as well as having the power of Esri behind that, we have a tremendous amount of flexibility to not only model copper, fiber, coax, and even conduit. I'm going to show you a conduit here, how we can model ducts and cables within ducts. But we also have the availability in fiber of looking at splitters. So we can see multiple circuits on a single strand of fiber. Or we can search for addresses. All of this is driven by the power of the data-driven maps that come along with Esri and Crescent Link. So now I'd like to open it up to any questions that the panelists may have, or if you have any, please feel free to put them into the chat forum and we'll take care of those. Here's a question. Do you see a lot of network providers moving their legacy network to a GIS system? The surprising answer to that is no. That's one of the reasons we wanted to do this webinar today, was to kind of take a little bit of the fear away from that. Again, we hear a lot of complaints about it: the high cost of conversion, the comfort level, the change, and unfortunately that hinders a lot of people from making that switch. But it doesn't have to be. Geograph is here to help with that, as well as other providers. Conversion efforts are usually provided. We provide it. I'm sure they're provided by most systems, and can help you get started and get that information into a GIS system. So another question: say we are bought in and we really want to move to a GIS system. Where and how would we even start with getting our records into a GIS system? That's a great question, one we get asked a lot. And again, I'll go back to GIS is not a black box that you can just dump a bunch of information into and it comes out right. Bad data in is going to be bad data out, regardless of where it's coming from. But what we can help with is assisting with field audits, assisting with conversion, and working through the process of making sure that we take the information you have, get it accurate into a GIS system. And that's one of the things we pride ourselves on, is that we take a lot of pride in making sure that we work with the organization to get the right information together and put it in a system that they can have to be successful. So a question: how do I share fiber data with a non-GIS user, aka my boss? Another excellent question. With the power of Esri, you have things like ArcGIS Online. You have web maps that you can publish. You can push this GIS data from the desktop into multiple mobile environments. You can extrapolate it into a KMZ to represent on Google Earth. There's all types of dashboards available for you there. Or you can print out nice, pretty maps in PDF. There's several forms that you can do this. And because it's in a GIS format, you have that flexibility, because the data is actually what's behind the scene. And you have multiple uses of interfaces to be able to interact with that. So another question: our engineers and drafters are really used to working with CAD. Is it hard to get transitioned to GIS from CAD? The short answer to that is yeah, it's hard. All change is hard. We're humans, and we don't like things that are different. I'm reminded of an instance we had on a training seminar. We went up to train some of the field techs who were CAD users on how to use the GIS tool, and we were there for 2 days. And the first 4 hours of the first day, I didn't think we were going to make it. I didn't think we were going to finish the 2 days. The technicians were just adamant this was not going to save them any time. They were very confused. They found it difficult. They fought it every step of the way until lunch. And after lunch, they came back, and we got back in there, and we just stayed patient. We kept working with them, and we kept answering their questions and showing them how to handle situations that they were used to handling with AutoCAD. And by the end of the second day, they were bought in and they were ready to go. They saw the value and the efficiencies that GIS could help them with, and they were ready to take the leap. One of the things that we recommend when you're fighting change is you got to have good leadership in place. This has to be driven from the top down. If the executives and the leadership are not behind pushing this initiative, it'll never get adopted. I've seen it happen too many times that the people actually doing the work on the back end fight it so much that people just throw their hands up and forget it. So it has to have good leadership. Second, there has to be somebody, a white knight, that will take the lead and really drive the innovation. And if you have those two things in place, you can have a successful conversion from CAD to GIS. But it takes a lot of work, and definitely it's not easy. Well, I know we're coming up to close on our time. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to continue to submit those. We will reach out to you guys with any answers to those, or take those deeper if you'd like us to. Um, and just a reminder of our upcoming webinar series. June, we're going to be talking about the pros and cons to consider when designing fiber networks. There's a lot of different thoughts surrounding this, and excited to talk about all the options that you have available for you there. September, we're going to be talking about bringing spatial awareness to feasibility planning, so that full view, that full knowledge view that you have with GIS. We're going to be kind of exploring that a little deeper in September. And then how can you use GIS to minimize OpEx? How can you save some money and have these systems pay for themselves? We're going to be looking at that later in the year in November. If you have any questions about this webinar, our services, our people, please feel free to reach out to us. You can find a lot more information at www.geograph.tech, or feel free to email us at info@geograph.tech. Yeah, just another question for those of you that may have missed the first part. We are recording this. We will have it available, and we'll send it out to everyone on the registration list to watch at your convenience. So if you missed any part of this, don't fret. We will get you the full webinar here shortly. And with that, I'd like to say thank you. Thank you for your participation today. Thank you for your time. And we look forward to hopefully speaking with you soon. I hope everyone takes care and have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.